right, so welcome everyone again. I just wanted to introduce you to the idea of the Concert of Europe in this period of time that really is going to be officially done with the Crimean War and this Concert of Europe. So the Congress system or the Congress of Europe are these series of congresses or times when the different countries met together to try and achieve peace, a lasting peace and negotiation throughout Europe. Very noble causes. However, their major goal is to limit the spread of liberal ideas, to stop revolutions, and to maintain pre-revolutionary status quo of Europe. So they want to contain France, make sure that France doesn't grow at all, achieve a balance of power between Europe's great powers. They want to uphold the territorial arrangements made at the Congress of Vienna, and in doing so, prevent the rise of any kind of Napoleon-esque figure that's going to result in another continent-wide war. And this effort, right, and those goals, historians generally have agreed that they were successful. You look and say there really is no major war pitting great powers against each other until the Crimean War, 40 years later. And France was really successfully reintegrated back into the fold of Europe, joining the alliance by 1818 at that Congress of Aix-la-Chapelle. However, after this success, the Concert of Europe really did gradually fall apart, mainly because of disagreements among the great powers, particularly between Britain and the countries with more conservative constitutions. England's greatest goal is freedom of the seas, maintaining its trade interests. Europe's major goal is much more ideological, and so that difference ends up making it a lot harder. Despite the overall failure, I would say, but that's also a debatable topic, of the Congress system, it marked an important step in world diplomacy. And it lasted in total for about 85 years. And in that time, it really had erected an imposing structure of international law. And it sets up this tradition of nations potentially being able to negotiate peace without really going to war. And really, we can look at the League of Nations, later on the United Nations, really as inheritors to this tradition of a Congress system of meeting together. So in 1818, they meet at the Congress of Aix-la-Chapelle. Why are they meeting here? Well, it's actually the meeting to try and end the occupation, the military occupation of France. And the banks take over reparations, and France will be paying its banks rather than the countries themselves. And with that, once it's no longer the international community sort of imposing its law upon France, but now it's a more distant structure, the banks that are doing it, France is also able to become a member of the Quadruple Alliance. So by 1818, France is fully back into that fold. At the same time that that's happening, in Latin America, there are revolutions. And in 1804, we have the Haitian Revolution, which was directly related with the French Revolution. But in the 1820s, José de San Martín and Simón Bolívar are going to be leading revolutions in Latin America. They were Creoles that they wanted to have equality with the Peninsulares. So the Peninsulares are those who were born in Spain, who then were sent over or chose to go over to Latin America to rule. And they had certain status that a Creole, someone who was born in Latin America, could never attain. And so these are groups that are going to be inspired by the ideas of the French Revolution, those acts, their words, and want to have their own independence. Russia, Austria, and Prussia are all very concerned about these Latin American revolutions. This, to them, seems like it's a threat for allowing revolutionary ideas to spread and establish freedom. This is dangerous. England, on the other hand, sees this as an opportunity. Spain had fairly exclusive trading rights and privileges in its colonies, and this might open up new doors for Britain to be able to trade. And so it's really much more interested in the trade benefit. And as a result, you really have this development of this sense of national self-interest as the first priority. In 1820, you have the Congress of Troppau. The cause of the Congress of Troppau is that there is this revolt in Spain, and there's an uprising in the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, in the southern portion of Italy, what is now Italy. There is a clash between Ferdinand VII of Spain and in Cadiz, And there's a question of legitimacy for these areas. Um, and the aristocrats are really wanting to get back to their old privileges of that time. And there's a small minority of middle-class intellectuals who are dissenting. And in Spain in 1812, there was a liberal middle class that wrote up a constitution. Their really goal was to limit the power of the monarch and increase the power of the courts system. The Bourbon king Ferdinand VII suspended this constitution, dissolved the courts, and tried to stop rebellions in the colonies. And ultimately, he becomes a prisoner to his own people in this uprising. In Portugal, there's also an uprising, and the Carbonari in Italy, in the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, they're going to start leading a resistance. They're called the Carbonari. They're a nationalist society in Italy, a secret national society. They're going to lead a resistance against these outside rulers who are dominating over the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. What this is going to lead to is the Triple Alliance of Conservation. The leaders are meeting in Treptow, which is in Silesia, in 1820. They're going to be against the revolutionary ideas, and so they're going to intervene. They're going to decide to intervene. And so Russia, Austria, and Prussia all declare war on the revolutionary governments to stop them from gaining any kind of traction. In the Congress of Laibach in 1821, Austria also then directly gets involved in Sicily and goes and invades Naples in order to restore the king. So in each of these Congress systems, what's happening is they're reestablishing their rule. In the Congress of Verona in 1822, the question that they're dealing with is the Greek independence, which is breaking away from the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Greek Revolution, the Greeks are fighting to be able to gain emancipation from Turkish overlords. They look to Russia to intervene and to support them because they share a similar heritage, the similar religion. They're both Eastern Orthodox. The first outbreak against the Turks came in 1804 among the Serbs. And Serbia will gain the support of Russia, and will succeed by 1830 to become an autonomous state under Turkish domain. And Russia also has interest now in aiding the Greeks. And why is this? Well, they are really interested in having control of the Baltic Peninsula, so that way they can keep it as a puppet state for themselves. If you take a look, just to remember, the Baltic Peninsula here ends, at the very bottom of it would include Greece, but one side of it is the Aegean Sea and therefore into the Black Sea, and this would be where Crimea is, and this is where Russia has its warm water port. So any way that they could gain more control here would be of its advantage. And so Britain, France, and Russia all together do intervene for the Greeks' independence, to save Greek independence. Now, Austria does not get involved. Metternich wanted to put down the rebellion because he believed that if it succeeded, it could possibly lead to different Austrian ethnic groups also wanting their independence. The other nations, though, have a very romantic notion of giving Greek independence. It's coming from the idea that Western tradition and Western heritage comes from the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, and there's something noble about the Greek cause and their desire for a nation. And many romantic writers and thinkers actually traveled to Greece to support the cause. And I believe I told you about Lord Byron before. Here's the poet himself. He was one of many of the European liberals who went to Greece to aid in the cause. Now, despite the fact that it was a liberal cause, different countries, with the exception of Austria, did have personal interest in getting involved in this independence, and they were more than happy to see a weakened Austrian Ottoman Empire. So Austria was really the only one that was not happy. At the Treaty of Adrianople, they gave Russia some Turkish territory, and the Greeks formed a very small independent kingdom. Most Greeks were still a part of the Ottoman Empire, so you can see that really the Kingdom of Greece is only that very dark blue. And national and liberalism really did lose in the end, and Russia is really viewed as the protector of orthodoxy in the Balkans, not as a supporter of nationalism, but rather intervening on behalf of religious terms. In terms of how Spain gets resolved, By this point, the French are going to intervene in Spain with the question of Ferdinand VII. The French army will restore Ferdinand VII to the Spanish throne, and that ends the Quadruple Alliance because the British are afraid of intervention in the Americas. They really don't want to be getting involved. And instead, what they end up backing is the Monroe Doctrine with the United States in 1823, which really closes the Western Hemisphere. It's England's force that's putting this on. They say, you know, we will leave South America alone because of its interest in the trade, and that it was to their advantage to have that. The Greek War of Independence really marks an important point of decline for the Congress system because England is no longer participating. And so without England, there's less unity, and the dismantling of an empire, the Ottoman Empire, means that they're really unable to stand for anything but the status quo. Now, in 1825, we have another meeting of the Congress, and this one is occurring, but it is weak. It's called the Decembrist Revolt. Alexander I had been actively, by this point, suppressing nationalists and liberals within Russia. And despite this, there's the formation of many different secret societies throughout Russia after 1815. So there's one group known as the Northern Society, and these are high-ranking officers at St. Petersburg. They're fairly moderate. They want Russia to be a limited, decentralized monarchy with provinces that had the rights of almost like American states in that relationship. They wanted to free the serfs, but not allow them to hold land. So pretty much just be tenement farmers. In addition to the Northern Society, which was much more the high-ranking officers and elite, there's also a group called the Southern Society, which are your impoverished officers in Kiev. And they wanted a very highly centralized republic. They want freedom for serfs and the right for them to hold their land. So they want a much greater federal system with weaker states instead. Now, in December of 1825, Alexander I dies, and there's actually a question as to who should be the next czar. The older brother Constantine actually relinquishes his rights to the throne to Nicholas, his younger brother. But many people view that as an illegitimate inheritance to the throne, and the Northern and Southern societies are going to view this as a real opportunity to demand that they want reform, that they want to be able to get more rights. This all comes to a head with these Decembrist revolts, which occur in St. Peter's Square in St. Petersburg. And it's really the first attempt that we will see in Russian history that they tried to overthrow absolutist regime in Russia for a political goal of reform. They're influential groups, that Northern Society in particular, and they conceived of a Russian state that was separate and distinct from the ruler. And that is shocking. For so much of its history, Russia's identity was its Tsar, and the two really go hand in hand. The Decembrist Revolt, however, was a complete failure. It was disorganized. Men were getting arrested and executed. But these writings will be read, studied, and modeled for future revolutions, and they learned from this revolution. And future revolutionaries, such as Lenin, are going to have read about this and know about this Decembrist revolt and have learned from the mistake. As the conservative order withdrew from dominating international politics, revolutions broke out throughout Europe. So as this Congress system sort of failed and the conservative order starts no longer intervening on international level, we start to see the revolutions of 1830 and 1848, which are much more revolutions on calling for liberal and nationalist ideals. The breakdown of the concert of Europe opened the door for movements of national unification in Italy and in Germany, as well as liberal reforms elsewhere. The Crimean War itself is going to demonstrate the weakness of the Ottoman Empire and contributed to the breakdown of the concert of Europe, thereby the conditions in which Italy and Germany could be unified after centuries of fragmentation. So it's really the failure of this Congress system that is going to lead to much change in Europe and is really what's guiding us straight through to World War I. So at this point, that's where I want to stop. So it is a brief edition, and I hope you have a good afternoon. All right, take care.